The content of this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your mental or physical health. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and do not replace personalized care from a licensed professional.
Welcome to Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante, a space where a nurse practitioner and educator shares real talk on mental wellness, mindfulness, and navigating life in and out of healthcare. Let's take a moment to breathe, reflect, and grow together.
Welcome to Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante. And for all those of you that are tuning in, happy Pride Month. Welcome to this meaningful conversation on living and leading with pride. Today we are creating space for stories, reflection, courage, and connection. Nursing is more than a profession. It is a calling rooted in passion, advocacy, trust, and human dignity. For LGBTQ+ nurses, allies, students, educators, and healthcare leaders, the journey often includes moments of strength, vulnerability, resilience, and transformation. Today's discussion is not just about identity, it's about belonging. It is about what happens when people are allowed to show up fully, lead authentically, and care for others without having to hide part of themselves. As we begin, I invite everyone listening in to approach this conversation with openness, respect, and curiosity. These stories matter. Representation matters. And the work of inclusion belongs to all of us. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this platform with you. And I met all of you guys at DNPs of Color conference and FADLN conference, and have worked closely with Travis during the clinical preceptorship on your PMHNP journey. I'm so proud of all your accomplishment. I've been following all of your work. And Dr. Luis, congratulations also on your DNP recent graduation. All right, we'll just make it conversational in terms of like the first question that I will ask you guys is, can you share a moment in your nursing journey when you are truly felt seen, accepted, or empowered to be your authentic self? And we'll start with Benjamin. Lindsay?
Hi, my name's Benjamin. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a nursing professional development specialist in Rochester, New York. I think about a time when I was collaborating with someone to make simulations for healthcare providers, and they asked me to make a healthcare simulation for someone that had still had a uterus but was identifying as a man, and they trusted me to make that a meaningful experience for other healthcare providers and use my expertise and feel empowered. And it was a really well received simulation and seen as very important, not just by my mentor, but by the people that participated in it. And I think that was one time that I realized that I had expertise that could positively influence healthcare providers in the way that they provide care. So that is, I think, one time when I really felt seen.
Thank you for sharing that. And this is the beginning of something that nurses are being here. We deserve to be seen also as healthcare providers. And thank you for emphasizing that. How about you, Dr. Travis Brown?
Hi, my name is Travis. I am a PMHNP up here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I believe that I felt seen any time that I've been able to show up to work as my whole self, being able to authentically live as a gay man and show up to work as professionally as possible, not having to hide that identity, and having my patients and also my superiors and also my colleagues not only accept who I am, but just allow me to be who I've always been. Yeah, I think when I was nominated for the Daisy Award, my last position, I was put in a very tough spot to um, advocate for one of my patients who also identified as gay, and they really needed a voice for them, and I was able to be that voice in which they were going to be wrongfully sent home. They were still going through sepsis, and I was able to speak up through the multiple chains. And ultimately, they ended up getting the surgery that they needed that same day because it was very emergent. And yeah, I was recognized for not only being myself, but also standing up for someone that needed a stronger voice for them when no one else was listening.
Thank you, Travis. That's amazing. How about you, Miss Sarah Wells?
Hi, so I'm Sarah. I'm also in the Bay Area, Travis. I'm in Oakland, and
Oh, really?
yeah, and
I live in Oakland.
beautiful
Yeah.
people live in Oakland.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Georgia. I grew up in Southern Georgia. Went to college in North Georgia. Played rugby, and it was in this very queer space of my rugby community that I was like, I love this. I feel this, but I was raised in an area where it was very not of the time to be out or and about. And I didn't really understand it myself because I'd mostly been with men. And it was only a few years ago that I really came out as bisexual because I started seeing more and more media about women who were married to men, but also had that side of them. And I was like, two things can be true. Is this honest? And since then, I sort of had a small coming out to some of my nursing friends, and this kind of overlaps, I think, in nursing and personal. But I had a conversation with like Benny and was like, I think I'm queer too. And they were like, great. And a lot of my nursing friends were like, great. And in the Bay Area, that's not that unusual. But I had a shift in myself once I started doing that and coming to work because I'd always identified as an ally. So I was usually loud and proud and wearing the rainbows and all the things and had my pronoun badge buddy on. But it felt more real once I had admitted to myself and started sharing with other people. And I think I had a patient come in and ask me about my pronouns because I had them on my badge, and we had this whole great conversation. And I was like, yes, and I was saying things like, as a queer person, and it just felt authentically real. So this journey is kind of new for me, just the last few years, but it has made everything better when you can come and feel your whole self at work, in the patient care space, or with your friends and colleagues. So very excited this year to be here.
Thank you, Sarah. Now we go with Dr. Luis Vega.
Thank you for the question. But there's like three components here. Felt seen, accepted, and empowered, and it's a little bit different for me. So I come from Puerto Rico. My initial studies and my first job was in Puerto Rico, which is still a Latino community. There's still a lot of machismo, but within nursing, it's very conservative. I remember my job in Puerto Rico, we only wear white scrubs. Nurses still use caps every now and then. I mean, it's very conservative. It is professional, but they go a little bit over it. So for me, being seen, it didn't happen until actually I came here to the United States that I relocated to Florida. I remember the first June working, somebody approached me and said, Happy Pride to me. And I was like, what? Because I never saw a rainbow in Puerto Rico or anything like that. So it was a little bit different. About the accepted, I think I never was like closeted in any of my jobs or anything like that. I was like always gay, loud, proud, and about. And this is me and this is my husband. Do you like it? Good. If you don't like it, you can keep walking. So the acceptance was about my own comfort in my own skin. And the empowerment part, I think I began to feel more empowered as I got involved in advocacy in nursing. Once I started joining DEI committees at different organizations and doing some advocacy work around DEI, that's where I felt more empowered because my voice is being heard now. Like now I've been seeing, like I know what I'm talking about, and I have something to say. I belong to this table, and that's when the empowerment actually happens.
Thank you so much for sharing all of those stories that of you guys. What I hear in your story is the power of affirmation. And sometimes one moment of acceptance can change how someone sees themselves, their profession, and their ability to lead. And that is such a powerful reminder that inclusion is not abstract, it is personal and it's deeply felt. Now, for Sarah Wells, this question goes to you. What does living and leading with pride mean to you both personally and professionally?
I think now that I like feel comfortable in my own skin and with this like identity and conversation and accepting myself for who I really am, I think that was the first step. I think living loud and proud first starts with yourself, and then at whatever point you feel ready to like share that identity with others. And I think there's still a lot of my family and friends are still in the Southeast, and I live in the Bay Area, and sometimes it feels like two different countries when we're talking about openness and acceptance of the queer community. And so I think living loud and proud can be different in different spaces, especially when in regards to when you think of the lens of safety and where people feel safe living their authentic selves. For me, it's accepting myself, accepting others, and trying to be an example of someone who can be accepting of others. That a safe space for my patients, for my friends, for my colleagues. I always want to be a person that people think of, like if I have someone who is queer and if others, I worked in spaces where other people don't feel comfortable caring for queer individuals, and I want to be the person that they think of and go, Sarah, I think this person's for you. And I'll be like, yes, give me all the people. I think you have to lead by example and try to influence acceptance to others, because in the reality of 2026, depending on where we are, especially in the United States, we have to be considerate that there's a full spectrum of acceptance happening, and some are not very accepting. But if I can create safety for others and also help others slowly start to accept others themselves, I think I've influenced in a loud and authentic way.
That is beautifully said. I appreciate how you connected pride not only to identity, but also to leadership and service. Now, this question is for you, Benjamin. How can nurses use their trusted role to advocate for LGBTQ plus patients, colleagues, and communities?
I think visibility is a huge part of how we can lead. I mean, essentially silently, just with visual representation of our pronouns, whether we put them in our Zoom or we put them in our email signature or we put them on our badges, like Sarah was saying. I think those visual reminders are, for me, when I become the patient, are ways that I see, oh, this is an inclusive space. I can feel safe here and I can be my authentic self here. But also using inclusive language and making sure that we're being inclusive, right? So not just women's health, but it more inclusive than women's health, because not only women are going to receive care there, or people that identify as women. Not only women have uteruses, and all patients with uteruses need certain care. So I think really making sure that inclusive language is being used, but also throughout our policies, because without it being in our policies, then it becomes a little bit of a trickle down of, if it's not inclusive in our policies, then we're not being inclusive in our language when we use our policies. So making sure that our policies align with the way that we provide care and be as inclusive as possible.
That is such an important point, and thank you for emphasizing that. I really, really applaud you for that. And now, on your PMHNP lens, Dr. Brown, how can you cater to this population?
Um, I think it really comes to showing up, really listening, taking action when support is needed. Um, sticking up for the underdog, leading with empathy is always something that is very paramount. If you can be that person that can say, I know what you're going through without even having to say that, is something that's very transformative within your care. Um, Sometimes not even separating your identity from your professional role. If you can almost blend them in your care, patients will really come to you as someone that they can confide in, and that, again, someone they can know that's going to fight for them when needed, but also just give them the best care.
I think it begins with curiosity, because it doesn't matter if I'm part of the LGBTQ spectrum, or I'm an ally, or I'm just a regular nurse that doesn't really care about pride. It comes with curiosity. As we take the time ourselves to, be humble, culturally humble, and be able to educate ourselves, um, we learn how to interact with the patients. We learn when to talk and when to advocate for them. I think it's part of, I think we're going to talk about it later on, but when we talk about authentic allyship, that's part of it. Authentic allyship applied to me as well. And I always have authentic allyship is shown when I'm not there. When I'm not there, is you're able to correct harmful comments if you are asking whose voice is missing, or listening without defensiveness, or being an advocate, being active, consistent, and humble, even if I'm not present. I mean, it's fine if I'm with you and you call me by my pronouns. I do appreciate that, but I even appreciate it more when I'm not there and you're being still an advocate for me. So that's from my perspective. And again, I think support is important, but you need to be very conscious and very active and very consistent about it. We cannot stay silent whatsoever. It's not good for our patients. It's not good for our coworkers. It's just not safety in nursing.
Thank you, Dr. Luis. And allyship is a word that we always hear often, but authentic allyship requires action, humility, and consistency. Now, on your perspective, Sarah, how can allies respond when they make mistakes?
I think I've done that a lot, and in my experience, it having done probably the poorer reaction and the better recuperation recovery steps is apologize quickly, move on, and then asking what the correction should be. I think earlier in my life, I was very apologetic. This might be a Southern thing. This might be a woman thing. This might just be me thing. But I was always like, sorry, and would dwell on it and be like, how do I make it up? But that's not good. You gotta just say sorry and move forward. And also, if you're not sure how to move forward, I think just asking and listening, because I don't always know the correct answer. So as an authentic ally, I think the best thing you can do is to be truly collaborative and be curious, like Dr. Vega was saying, what do you prefer as the person who's from that lived experience? What is the right way to move forward? But not dwelling in it, not being overly apologetic is key. And also making sure that you don't try to direct the correction without also listening to the person that maybe you have fumbled with. I think is helpful.
Thank you for emphasizing about accountability and owning to your mistakes and standing up for it.
That's a good word for it, accountability.
Yeah. Accountability is indeed important. Benjamin, can you share an experience where representation or the lack of it made an impact on patient care, workplace, culture, or professional growth?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think I talked a lot about visibility, and visibility could just be a pin, it could be a sticker on your badge. And at some point, I was seeing care of a patient who had made an attempt on their life. And they saw the progress flag sticker that was on my badge. And while I was getting report, a lot of people that had taken care of this patient were like, they're very resistant. They don't want to interact. They don't want to be engaged in care. And the first thing that happened when I walked in was they saw that I had the progress flag on my badge, and they completely let their walls fall down and become engaged in care. And they were hard of hearing, so they used sign language, and they had put this up as pride, and just kept saying pride, pride. And I was like, yes, yes, I am a part of the community, and I am safe. I'm a safe space, and I want you to get out of here as soon as possible, as long as it's safe for you to. And I actually ran into that individual while I was walking into work one day, and it was a really wonderful interaction. That they were like, "I'm doing great. I'm so glad that everything worked out how it was supposed to." And that's one reason that I continue to make sure that there's some sort of visible sign of acceptance and a safe space, and pass out safe space pins to my colleagues, because that interaction stays with me and made all the difference for that person, where they might have ended up on an inpatient psych unit because they weren't being engaged in care. They were discharged from the ICU the second day that I had them. So
And did representation influence your sense of belonging in nursing, Dr. Brown?
It did. I would say, really to piggyback off of what Benjamin said, if you could be that person to really be open for not only your patients, but also for your coworkers, it allows people, especially your patients, to go from less guarded to more open. And then also, it lowers the incidence of cultural shrinking of yourself, so that way you feel like you need to belong. Anytime that I've been out and proud, if you will, on who I am and standing up for what's right, I always felt like it was just kind of second nature for other people to follow that lead of, yeah, we're here, we deserve the respect of everyone else. And I think exactly like what Sarah is, that there's a spectrum of acceptance in this country. So follow the safety that you need to, of course, in certain aspects of America, say in like the Bay Area or in California in general. Yeah, having that understanding and that attitude of pride can really go such a long way. And yeah, people really feel that. And a lot of people really enjoy that presence.
I agree with you. And Dr. Berger, can you answer this question? What happens when healthcare spaces lack visible diversity?
Uh, like they mentioned, all of them, when you're visible, you feel comfortable. You feel like you can bring your whole self and not shrink into a box. You feel safe. You are able to open with patients and stuff like that. But if we don't have that visibility anywhere, not even how we talk with the patients or what are we wearing, or so it's not only about badges and rainbows and stuff like that, but how you approach to the patient. I think one of the most impactful patients that I had, it was trans. I had no idea it was a trans patient. And I just introduced myself, I used my pronouns, I asked for the name, the pronouns, and all of a sudden I see this person eyes lighting up. And I'm like, what the F is happening here? Because, I did not know. And then they introduced themselves, they let me know right away that they were trans and all that. And I was like, oh, that is what's happening. And you see, that's the big difference about being mindful and having that cultural humility and learning how to approach your patients and how to talk to them. Because even if you're in a place where visibility is not loud, you still can make the difference. And I think that's the most important part of my message right now with this question is like, it doesn't matter if you're in a place where visibility is not there. You can change the environment, you can change your approach to the patient, and you can make it better. So, and remember, it's not always about the patient. Sometimes it's about family member. You don't know who's watching you. You don't know which is a gay kid seeing this professional nurse taking care of my mom, and how can we impact them in the long run? We never know.
Thank you, Dr. Vega, for that powerful response. And all of your stories highlights why representation is not just symbolic. I'm hearing it affects trust, right? It affects communication, safety, and outcomes. And when people see themselves reflected in healthcare, whether as patients or professionals, it can reduce isolation and open the door to better care. Now, all of you guys are doing so much in the field of nursing, and nursing can be emotionally demanding. And a lot of people can relate to this. How do you maintain your well being while showing up fully for your patients and your teams? Sarah, start with you.
I think I have a very strict boundary on my private life versus my public facing life and caregiver life. And so I try to like keep some things precious to me. And so my family time, my personal time, my hobbies, and all these kind of things are really important. I try to invest time in them. And I also try to have a hard cut off time in the day. Like nursing, I find is like a 24/7 identity, right? And so I have to be very intentional about, okay, at this time of day, I'm either turning off my computer or not answering texts or going on social media. I can't do it 24/7 and still have any like gas in the tank. So I try to really invest in my time and my community, my like home community and people. They're very precious to me. I think also community building is really important. So I've tried really hard and be intentional and like surrounding myself with the people who support me, amplify me, and elevate me whether I'm with them or without them. And I think that's really important to make sure your community includes those persons. And then I'm a very big advocate for mental health support. So if from nursing students to about and retirees in nursing, if you don't have a good mental health practitioner or clinician working with you, you need to put that in your toolkit. I'm a big advocate for talk therapy, whatever kind of mental health support works for you, because different things work for different people. But I'm a psychiatrist. I take a daily medication to help me with my mental health, and my community is huge for that. And so I think those are like key to me being well and being balanced.
Thank you for emphasizing self care, boundaries, and mental health. And it's indeed a priority because sometimes, as healthcare providers like us, right, I think we always give the best care, but we are the last one to receive the care for ourselves, right? And it's always a trend in happening. And sometimes burnout is real, and we seek help when it's really needed and we're in bad shape already, right? Now, Dr. Brown, what practices help you stay grounded?
I think it's going about the understanding of you can't pour from an empty cup. Piggybacking off what you said, a lot of healthcare providers are termed something I like to call wounded warriors, where sometimes we don't think about ourselves. Sometimes we have that badge of honor. Society can call us superheroes, if you will, and we take that to be our identity. But I am a brother before I was a nurse. I am a best friend before I was a nurse. And piggybacking off of what Sarah says, when we're able to take that identity and also know that it's not the only identity, I love nursing. I love that I'm able to contribute to such a great profession. But we're more than just that. We also need to fill up our own cups. We can't pour from an empty cup. So exercising, eating clean, spending time with my loved ones, taking time off, utilizing that PTO, also, talking to my therapist, doing journaling, all those are going to fill up my cup little by little. That way I'm able to pour it into my patient's cup. But yeah, being able to understand that even though I do love nursing, I do love that cap, it is appropriate to take off that cap. That way you can start becoming yourself and, yeah, fill up your cup one day at a time.
Thank you. Dr. Luis, how do you protect your peace in challenging environments?
Well, this is a big question, especially in today's environment with the political, climate that we have right now. Because being a nurse is stressful enough. Now, being a DI advocate in this political climate is just too much. So I can see where you're coming from with this question. There's other factors that drains me too as a queer person. Like I being the constant educator for everybody who wants to learn affirming care is it drains you as well. I mean, I think we need to be accountable for our own education. So I mean, I think we don't talk about it enough, but it drains my life being a constant source of education for everybody. Now, that being said, I think you stay connected with your purpose, but you need to be very respectful of limits. And, when we talk about emotional intelligence, nurses are very good at the motivation part, at the empathic part, and all that. But we tend to forget about the self awareness and the self regulation. And I think rest is a very powerful thing. And those who know me, I'll have my periods that I don't answer not one call in the whole week. Just text me if it's important because I'm resting right now. There's periods that I don't even turn on the TV because I don't want to watch any other news coming out. So I think rest is very important. Also, relying on your tribe. Sarah would know that I will text her and vent with her. My husband knows that at any point I'm like, okay, I need you to listen to me right now because I need to get it out. And I do have my little tribe that I know I can trust and call at any time, at any point, and just vent, brainstorm, and maybe even come with a plan of what to do next. Sometimes the best way for me to actually release some of that energy is actually being more vocal and creating a disruptive comment in Facebook or something like that. Because I think I can release energy that way. So that's how I do it.
Thank you for naming that. And nurses are often expected to care endlessly, but well-being can sometimes be not optional, right?
Mhm.
So I'm hearing rest boundaries, communities, therapy, spirituality, creativity, and chosen family can be part of the survival and strength for us. And you cannot pour from an empty cup, and nurses deserve the care too. But for Benjamin, can you tell me what support system have been most meaningful to you?
Yeah, I think about my chosen family and, my nuclear family. I grew up in a very small town, and there was a lot of the same people represented, and there wasn't this visibility of cultural diversity, even LGBTQ plus individuals, and so they weren't exposed to that, the cultural diversity and the ethnic diversity that I was going to flourish in and really feel belonging to. So they don't understand a lot of what happens in my life, whether it's in nursing or even personally at this point. So finding those safe spaces that may have a blood connection or may not, and really dig into those. I mean, it's Sarah is one of my people that I reach out to. Luis is one of the people that I reach out to because we have to stay grounded and have an emotional response to a lot of what's going on with safe people. And then we can turn the knob the other direction and say, okay, I got that emotional first pass out. With my safe space, I know that's not going anywhere. And I know that I can do some deep breathing and get back on take care of whatever might be going on at that point. So I think really just finding your people that are you're able to be authentically yourself and have an emotional response to, but help you walk through overcoming that initial emotional response so that you can be thoughtful and professional. So finding the people that can relate to your experiences, I think is really important, and finding the people you can have an emotional response to something that is really offensive to you, and people might not even realize that it's offensive to you, so that you can come back and have a thoughtful response rather than be emotional about it. Because the only way people are going to learn from you is if you come back with a thoughtful, measured response than the initial emotional response that you had to what you felt like wasn't appropriate.
Thank you for emphasizing meaningful connections and also finding your people, your core people that you trust. That's very important. Now, Sarah, this question is for you. How have social media, professional organizations, or community networks help amplify LGBTQ plus voices in nursing?
I love this question. So, I'm a big fan of social media and professional associations and digital communication in general. So this is fantastic. I think we can take a message and amplify it millions and millions and millions of times over and really reach beyond borders. Like the geography of the world is gone when you go online and into the virtual space. I'm sure you have a very diverse followership yourself, Dr. Morante. And I bet money they're not all from one area where you live. So you're influencing globally, right? And so what we can do as individuals on social media is share our story and be seen and raise awareness there. Now, what I really love to do is help amplify diverse voices in larger spaces. And so I've worked at associations, I've worked in channel partners where we can amplify stories on things like blogs, podcasts, other digital media. And my goal has always been to diversify the stories being featured because, to be very honest, in a lot of media, it's a very homogenous perspective that you're getting, a very similar voice. Often, everyone is unique and different in their own way, but we are often getting white presenting, often heteronormative females in the nursing community. They are the majority demographically if you look at the stats, but that's not who all we are. And more importantly, that's not who our patients are. And so I think it's essential and vital that we amplify stories from historically marginalized communities in very large settings. And the best and easiest way and most accessible way for that is on the internet, because not everyone can get to a conference. Not everyone can get to the hospital where you work to learn about you. And so I love different media platforms like this where we can share our stories, engage with each other, but most importantly, share a content piece that can be shared and reshared to anyone who needs it, because you never know what nurse or patient loved one or whoever is going to see this and say, I feel safer now because I want to go to the hospital and go because there are nurses, the queer nurses there ready to take care of me. The queer community is usually much less ready to go to the hospital because they have often faced discrimination or biased care. That's been reported over and over in the research and studies. And so what we can do with these content pieces is help foster safety, inclusivity, and belonging online. Like if I can get this link sent to the right person on their phone and they can listen to this and feel better about going to the hospital or getting healthcare, we have achieved something. So I think that digital communication in general and digital media are just such an important piece of helping amplify our voices and raising awareness and putting out that representation that I think everyone's kind of spoken to.
Very well said, and thank you for that reminder that connection is very powerful. And many nurses have found community beyond the walls of their workplace through online platforms, and that's why I met you, all of you, these amazing people right here. We've been friends on LinkedIn before we saw each other in the conference, so that's such a powerful connections to organizations and advocacy networks are really important. Now, how can nurses use social media responsibly for advocacy? Dr. Luis, I know you're very active on LinkedIn and other social media.
Of course. Well, I mean, First of all, let's talk for 1 second about rainbow washing. Because there's a very thin line between amplifying voices and advocating with doing just rainbow washing and just putting a rainbow or changing the logo just for the month of June. And I think there's a lot of professional organizations that are falling in this category. Like, they're very cool during June Pride Month and then nothing. And so we need to be very careful about it. I think, like Sarah mentioned, social media is very powerful. And the more we post, the more we correct misinformation, the more we build community. Those are ways to actually advocate. Sometimes in my platforms, I feel like I'm teaching people, and I think that's the way of advocacy. But also calling out what's wrong is a type of advocacy. Again, it has to be something that is active. It has to be constant, and you need to be humble about it, right? But realistically, if I'm not able to call what is wrong and put my foot down and say no, then I'm not doing nothing as an advocate. Now, the same goes for nursing organizations. If we're talking about affirming care, trying to remove affirming care from everywhere, at some point, nurses organizations need to put their foot down and say, no, 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 no. This is best practice. This is evidence-based practice, and that's nursing. Nursing is evidence-based practice. So, if you may, I may have a call for action here. Organizations, put your big panties on and start working towards advocacy in a real way, not just rainbow washing for the month of June. Sorry, I'm the rebel in the group.
Thank you for the powerful message that you deliver. And that is a great reminder that visibility can build community. And when nurses share stories, resources, education, and advocacy, they help others feel seen. And social media that we are active on right now and professional networks can turn into individual experiences into a collective movement. Now, Dr. Brown, what is something you wish nursing school or early career mentors had taught you about identity, inclusion, and belonging?
Um, it should be taken seriously. Belonging matters, regardless on which vulnerable population you belong to. Um, the healthiest professional spaces are the ones in which inclusion isn't just something that is said, like Louis piggybacking off of that. It's not just for a specific month. It's not just for the praise or the recognition. It's those silent conversations where there is inclusion when the other person's not here, when you're not being recorded, when it's not on a website to make money. Um, I believe that's something I wish that nursing school really taught, is that it's fighting for the underdog when no one's listening, when no one is recording, when it's just you sometimes, or if it's just you and maybe that leadership. But inclusion really does matter. If you're doing it for any of those things I listed before, maybe you have to reevaluate why you're doing those things, and really listen to those voices that you're sticking up for, and then doing it because you want to do it. Yeah.
Thank you for that insights. And this is very important. What advice would you give to a nursing student who is struggling with belonging, Benjamin?
Yeah, that's a good question. Someone struggling with belonging. I definitely started somewhere that I struggled to feel belonging because there's I started in the ICU and there were a lot of new graduate nurses that had started in the ICU that I started in. And there was this constant undercurrent of, well, we don't know how to train new graduate nurses. And I was like, well, then what am I doing here? How did I end up here then? I don't feel belonging to this because I'm that group of people they're talking about, and they said it in front of me. So really find the space that you feel belonging to. So as a new grad at 10 months, I went and worked at a summer camp for the summer and felt so much belonging to that summer camp, and actually came back and worked in the same unit after taking that sabbatical to the summer camp. And there was a different energy to the unit because there had been some turnover. And some of the toxic individuals that were kind of moving that narrative that we don't teach new graduate nurses had left. So coming back, I felt a lot of belonging because there was a change in the vibe and the energy of the unit, and felt very passionate about being an ICU nurse and felt like I could succeed there after feeling that belonging. So I think really listen to your gut, and if it doesn't feel like a space that you feel like you belong in, then there's another space. There's another space with your name on it where you will feel belonging. And I definitely feel a lot of belonging where I work now and feel safe and feel empowered to speak up. And even in our current climate, with all the things going on, still take up space as an LGBTQ plus person and use they them pronouns, which I think some institutions, at least talking to colleagues, have decided that all of their presentations need to go through their legal department because they're so afraid of losing funding. So I think really finding that place where you feel the belonging.
That is so important that you mentioned that. And nursing education must go beyond technical aspects of competence, right? Students need to learn cultural humility, trauma informed care, inclusive communication, and the importance of creating safety for both patients and colleagues, right? Belonging should not be something nurses have to discover by accident, right? Now, this question is all for you. If you could implement one change tomorrow in healthcare organizations to better support LGBTQ plus nurses and patients, what will it be?
Universal mental health care.
There you go. Like that.
I would have some sort of measure of inclusion in their employee engagement survey, or even in their HCAPS, or how can we measure whether a person feels that they belong to my workforce, they belong to this clinic, this hospital? So finding an inclusive metric that could be followed, because unfortunately, if it's not a key performance indicator, it's not, it doesn't speak to a certain group of people, and usually leaders of these organizations. So if there was a way that we could track inclusion and really show whether it's good or bad and what trend that we're heading in, then that would be really helpful to move the work forward.
What I've liked and seen going through different orientations is different, how would you call them? They are different um, parts of the orientation phase, which does teach about everyone in our community, right? The different pronouns, but also allowing people to know about the trans community. That's always something that's been fairly new within orientations. I think also what allows me to know that I'm safe in an organization is seeing the advertisement, seeing like a billboard of, say, like a lesbian couple, and it's like, oh, I want to go to that hospital, right? It's like, I feel now a part of that. So, yeah, I think really incorporating it in the orientation process with every person in the team when they first start within the organization, but also increased advertisement.
In my case, if you ask me what I want, I mean, I concur with a lot of people, but I will take it a little bit further. Yes, a tool to measure and add it to the HCAPS, 100% agree. But you know what? I want to see it coming from the accreditor. I want to see JCO putting in the standards that you need to have this, you need to implement this, and you need to have this policy. On the outside world, I want to see more laws coming, not going, like the current environment is happening. So, I mean, with the hospitals, I think we need more of that, more policies, all of it. I think we kind of have good visibility, and that's enough, because I think, I mean, the goal is not a symbolic inclusion. Like, even if I have a lesbian couple in a picture in the elevator, fine. But if you don't do anything about it when you talk to me, you don't ask me about my pronouns, you don't care if I'm a cisgender or transgender or anything, well, that picture of the lesbian couple means nothing to me. And it's actually, I've seen some studies that mention it's actually more harmful having them and not being able or not knowing how to treat the patient is more harmful. I think the goal is not the symbolic inclusion. The goal should be, a measurable safety, dignity, and belonging to these hospitals and the healthcare per se.
Thank you for all your concrete and powerful recommendations. But I think it boils down all to your patient-centered practices that matters for our patients, and a lot of leadership accountability, and at the same time, individual kindness, right? We always choose kindness at all times with our patients. Now, this will be the last question. What gives you hope about the future of nursing, and what does a truly inclusive healthcare environment look like to you?
I think really historically looking back at the evidence of that there was a brick thrown in 1969 that has only continued to grow the movement of acceptance forward, and know that just because we're in our current climate does not mean that we will not continue to move the needle forward. We have elected officials that are identifying as LGBTQ plus, being elected despite of our current climate, and that only gives me hope and passion to continue to take up space, because they're doing it and it inspires me. So really looking back at, this has always been a riot, and this has always been an effort and a continued movement forward, and we will continue our movement forward. This is just right now is temporary.
I agree. I think that the thing that gives me the most hope is the changes in population too. Like right now, Gen Z has the highest percentage of LGBTQ. And I assure you, when Gen Alpha, I think is the name, comes into the workforce, which is like in 2030, the number is going to be even higher. And I think there's power in numbers. So I'm very excited about how the population is shifting and changing. And that kind of gives me hope.
I agree, Luis. Like the youth, the future nurses, the early career nurses, the younger nurses, they're going to make a huge difference. I work with a lot of nursing schools, just young nurses, early career nurses. They are going to demand different things. They expect different things. I think often they're much more grounded in our code of ethics. I think we have to go back and remind people about our code of ethics, because it is a professional, legal, and ethical obligation to promote equity, to promote social justice, and that includes inclusion for our queer community. I also think it's really important that we're moving to remind ourselves as we move into more of a tech-enabled landscape and moving forward in healthcare, that it can offer a huge amount of inclusion, or a huge amount of bias can be perpetuated. And so we have to be grounded in being part of every conversation surrounding the adoption of technology, specifically AI enablements in our space. But the combination of this next generation coming in, the shift of the demographics in our nursing community, the shift in demographics of our patient community and what they're going to be expecting, and also the technology fusion of that, I think it's a really exciting time. But we have to go back to where we come from. Our foundational documents in our code of ethics drives our practice, and it also helps drive us as advocates, where it's part of what we have to do as nurses. And so I think that is truly where I have hope, is that the youngest generation, the technology, and our code of ethics will come together and to be like super advocacy, super Jedi, super all those things. So I'm very optimistic, despite sometimes the geopolitical climate that we're in. It is important, and it's important to know where we came from, and it informs where we're going. Just like you said, Benny, with Pride started as a riot, it's going to continue to riot, and we can be radical in this space and still be professional.
I think what gives me hope are these kind of conversations, if you will. We are in a very interesting time and space. We have had multiple different flourishes, but sometimes it does get kicked back, and other times we go forward, and times we go back. A message I like to really remind a lot of people is we're still way better than we were 50 years ago. Even though the political climate does feel like we are moving somewhat backward, 50 years ago we could not even have this kind of podcast, right? So that's what gives me hope, is the understanding that we are still moving forward with everything. And just to keep your eye on the prize, this younger generation are the fighters, which is very inspirational. We can really take on a lot of that energy. But also, I would say this younger generation, we as nurses and nursing leaders are also inspiring them to continue on past their bachelor, to get their master's, to get their doctorate, to get their PhD, to get multiple. This is really wonderful that we're expanding the field of nursing to where we really can represent. We really can continue to fight for not only ourselves in the nursing profession, but everyone that we stand for. So yeah, I'm really hopeful for our future.
Thank you to all of you, amazing speakers and also superheroes in nursing. Your honesty, wisdom, and leadership. Thank you for reminding us that pride in nursing is not all about visibility, right? It is about advocacy. It is about creating safer space, and it's about making sure every patient, every student, every nurse, and every colleague knows they belong. And to everyone listening in, make sure you are not alone and you have a space here. You belong. And you can affirm, you can advocate, and you can interrupt harm. You can create belonging. Let us continue to live, lead, and care with pride. Happy Pride to all of us. This is a beautiful way to close. Thank you for all your words reminding us that nursing is not about skill, science, and service, and it's about humanity. It is about courage, and it's about showing up for people in some of their most vulnerable moments. Thank you so much for what you guys are doing. I hope I can catch up with you in all the conference, and we'll do lunch or dinner, right? I think we deserve some happy hour, not just seeing each other in virtual.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Thank you.
You guys are amazing.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante. Be sure to follow the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. If you find value in our time together, leave a quick review. It helps more people discover the space we're creating. For updates and more reflections, follow us on social media. Until next time, take care.